perfect time to apply a pulled handle to a mug is when it's in the leather hard state. This is a leather hard cup. It's partially dry. Has a cheddar cheese-like consistency and it hasn't started changing color yet. Still cool to the touch. It's the perfect time to apply a handle. Maybe work it out in your sketchbook to save time. Think about different forms of handles, and also depending on the size and the form of your cup, is it a 1-finger handle? Is it a 2-finger, 3 fingers? Does your hand wrap around the side? How do you prefer to hold your cup? And that's going to determine where your handle springs, how long your handle is. So when thinking about the anatomy of a handle, it has a waist and it flares at the points of attachment, meaning that it's a little bit thicker, a little wider where it attaches at the bottom and the top. And that's for strength, but also for aesthetics. And when it tapers in the midsection, your fingers can wrap themselves around it. If the handle's too wide or if it's sharp at the edges, it's going to be uncomfortable to get your fingers around. And also remember when you're making handles that everything shrinks about 10 to 12% in the kiln, and you have to oversize it a little bit to make sure that you're still going to be able to fit your fingers in after it's been fired. I start off with a thick coil of wedged clay. Make sure it's wedged. My coil is about 1 inch wide. I'm going to begin by cutting it into 2.5-inch sections, and I really prefer to start with a pre-shaped coil. So to do the pre-shaping, I'm going to just roll it just in the center. That's going to give it a natural waist. So just rolling it with 1 finger in the middle section. I'm going to flatten it. I'm going to drop it on each side. And now I have the brayer, a little hand roller. So I flatten it and adjust the right side, left side. Flip, flatten, right side, left side. The reason for that is this pre-shaping really reduces the amount of work that you have to do with this handle. I already begin with a natural taper in the midsection and a nice taper at the edge. Take a moment to just pre-shape a few handles. Now I'm ready for the pulling. There's 2 different ways I can attach handles. One is to pull them separately from the cup, and the other is to pull them off the cup. I'm going to show you both ways. So if I'm pulling it separately, I have a container of water here, a decent sized container, and when I'm pulling, what I'm doing is I'm using my thumb and I'm just kind of pulling straight down and then addressing the right side. See the V that the thumb is making with the forefinger? Right side, and then left side. So just get it wet everywhere. And it's called pulling, but I'm not really applying much pressure. So flatten it, right side, left side. If I feel friction, I get more water. And I'm moving around the handle so that it doesn't become lopsided. If it's ever too long, I can always just nip off the bottom, pinch it off. When I'm happy with the handle, I can set it to dry for about 10 minutes on the table. And the drying 10 to 15 minutes is important, so that way when I'm attaching it to the cup, I'm not leaving fingerprints. When I'm working, I really prefer to instead pull the handle directly off the mug. I find it much more direct. Just going to pre-shape one more handle here. When I'm pulling the handle directly off the mug, I want to make sure that I'm happy with the cross section. Then I'm going to slip and score the cross section. And slipping and scoring is really important to make sure that the handle sticks to the mug. Slip is the best glue for ceramics. It's just clay mixed with water. Now I'm going to consider where my handle springs at the top and the bottom. And I like to create mugs with a natural waist, so there's naturally a place for my fingers to go. So I'm going to make a mark with the handle so I know exactly where to slip and score. And I'm going to attach the handle. And one thing to note when I'm pulling off the mug is that the handle only bends once, and that really does prevent it from cracking. So this little handle is sticking straight up, and he's only going to bend over once when he's done getting pulled. Really taking a moment to work the handle into the surface of the cup so that it doesn't get pulled off. Turn it, see that it hasn't bent yet. I'm wetting it. Flatten it, right side, left side. And also make sure that I'm pulling straight down, that I'm not pulling at a cockeyed angle. Really make sure that the handle is coming straight out from the mug. And I really prefer this method. You know, it does take a little practice, but it's so much more direct. I don't have to wait for the handles to dry. I know exactly that I have enough clay, that it's not too short, that it's bent at the correct angle. So the last thing that I'm going to do is just stretch it a little bit here to get that little upward lift. And bend it once. Now the only thing I have to do here is to cut the angle of attachment. Remember again that the handle is going to shrink between 10 and 12%, depending if you're using porcelain or stoneware. The porcelain's going to shrink a little bit more. I'm going to take my fettling knife and I'm going to cut it at the same angle as the side profile of my pot. Make sure I'm happy with the form and the length. And now I'm going to trace it with my pin tool so I know exactly where to slip and score. And also double check, kind of look at it head on, double check that it's dropping straight down, that it's not cockeyed off to one side or the other. And at this point, when you're going to be touching the handle again, make sure that your hands are clean and dry. If your hands are really muddy, you're going to leave lots of fingerprints on this handle, so really make sure that you're keeping it clean. I'm just going to attach this bottom edge. Now as I let this cup dry, I want to make sure that it stays covered in plastic for a day or two until the handle can homogenize with the body of the cup, that it can become the same consistency. Because right now the handle's a little wetter than the cup, and if I let it air dry or if I set it in front of a fan, or it's going to dry too quickly and it will shrink and crack at the points of attachment. So really make sure that it dries slowly. And you're ready.